Okay, it has taken me a minute to feel ready to share this story about my donor. It's a long one, but I will do my best to make it as concise and short as possible. So here goes. I grew up with two moms, and I was conceived via IUI, which is different than IVF. So that's how I was conceived. And 27 years ago, there was very little information in regards to donors. So I actually have only one piece of paper about him. So here is my one singular piece of information about him. Also, maybe I should start back and talk about what is a donor. So a donor is when either you are a heterosexual couple and the man isn't able to develop enough successful sperm, and you have to literally go to a donor bank of men who donate their sperm and choose one. Same thing goes for a homosexual couple, any kind of family dynamic. If you cannot reproduce in the normal way, that's where donors come in. There's also egg donors, surrogacy, but this is not about fertility. We're just gonna strictly talk about donors. So what my moms did was they went to a donor bank, and back then they were given a few options, and this was the one they chose. So the only information I ever had about him growing up as a child was that he had brown hair, brown eyes, 5'10", Portuguese, and he went to graduate school, enjoyed cycling, teaches language, and is mature and friendly. So for someone like me, who is naturally so inquisitive, this plagued me for my entire life. I couldn't just accept this information. I needed to know more. This does not go to say that I wasn't appreciative of my upbringing. I wasn't appreciative of how I was brought into this world similarly, but not the same, because my experience is not even remotely close to someone in the realm of adoption. But there was this unknowingness, and it drove me crazy. Growing up, I was bullied so badly for having two moms. I got to a point in middle school where I created this fake dad because I was so sick and tired of, why do you have two last names? Why is your last name hyphenated? We heard that you're gay. And you know, it got so bad, especially in middle school. My mailbox was being knocked over every day. People were writing in chalk on my driveway that I'm, you know, gay, and just the profanity was out of this world. Pushed into lockers. I was harassed daily. I didn't have birthday parties. I didn't have sleepovers. People thought I was contagious, like that my moms were contagious. So I really fell victim to this pool of isolation, completely isolated myself, which then in turn, I believe that's what kind of was the catalyst to my eating disorder. As some of you know, or maybe not know, but that can be a separate video. I spent a year in the hospital, in and out of hospitals with an eating disorder, because I felt like I had to be the best at something. I didn't have a stable, quote-unquote, normal family. I wasn't good at sports. I wasn't good at art. I wasn't the smartest in the school. I was bullied so badly. So I thought to myself, well, there's one thing I can be the best at, and that's at losing weight. As also, trigger warning here, was the thought process I had. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna be the best at this, and then no one will be better than me. Well, was a little too good and went into organ failure. So anyways, back to me always having questions, right? I grew up always wanting to know more information, and my parents just didn't have access. So still to this day, his donor number, the number that the donors are assigned, it's private, it's locked, you can't access it. And nowadays, oh my god, it is so different, profoundly different. It's kind of like Hinge and Tinder. You go on to these donor banks and you can swipe through all their photos. There's an identity release program now where kids can have access to the donors and meet them and talk to them when they turn 18. When I was looking at donors for my own fertility journey, obviously not anymore since I'm single, you looked at donor profiles that had 20, 30 pages worth of information and photos, baby photos, adult photos. I mean, it was like, it was incredible. But at the same time, it was defeating, because I thought to myself, oh my god, how amazing, but also, wow, I really wish I would have had access to this kind of information growing up. Maybe I would have understood more of the way that I carried myself and the way that I spoke and moved in life. I was similar to my mom, but there were so many differences. I didn't know where my stubbornness came from. I didn't know where the curiosity came from. I just didn't know where these attributes stemmed from. And for some people, it never bothers them. They never need to know. And that's fine. But for me, I had to. High school was when I began the journey. I began the journey of trying to find him. Not in depth, it was more so just casually. At the time, my other mom, who actually adopted me, she was also adopted herself, and she was in the process of looking for her biological family. So we both were kind of on this journey. My moms were always open and accepting to this process. They always encouraged me to do my own research and find him, and you know, but was always mindful of the fact that, like, they knew that there would be a good chance that he would want nothing to do with me. Rightfully so, right? That why would he? He donated anonymously 27 years ago. Why would he want anything to do with someone like me? Mom was finding her biological family. I was trying to search the donor code numbers. I was trying to get access to the Rochester Regional Donor Clinic Bank. Nothing. Everything was sealed. There was nothing I could do. So then my next venture was a private investigator. I kind of gave up for a couple years when I was in college, because I was going to nursing school. I had Emily and my mom was sick, and it was just too much. I was like, you know what, I'll put this on the back burner. So after graduating college, I resumed. Again, I did Ancestry, I did 23andMe, nothing. No, I had paternal matches, hundreds of paternal matches, mind you, but none were him. None were a first cousin or a second cousin. They all were just third, fourth, fifth, sixth, like nothing linked back to who he was in particular. I knew the information that I did, right? Knew he was in Rochester at some point, so started going through yearbooks. I knew when he was born, so I took a guess on when he would have graduated. The amount of yearbooks I looked through, hundreds. Libraries I went into, I went online and went to all the colleges in Rochester's. Everything. I thought maybe if I saw a photo of him, I could be like, oh, he looks like me. That's him. Not quite. Again, I stopped. I had hired a private investigator, and I was like, okay, go ahead, do whatever you can do. I trust you. I hadn't heard back for weeks. And then all of a sudden, I was in my car in my driveway, and I received a notification on my phone from Ancestry. And I will never forget this day for the rest of my life. It was snowing. It was a beautiful snowy day. It was in December. And I got a notification saying that I had a new match on Ancestry. I hadn't gotten a notification like that in a decade since I had done the testing. I opened the notification and it was the very first cousin of my donor. So I went and I clicked the match, and I sat in my car, I was not shaking, I was more so dumbfounded. I was like, this can't be real. There's no way. After all these years of searching and trying so hard, it was as easy as just this. So I looked at the match, I looked at my cousin, I kept refreshing it, going in and out of the app. I was like, it has to be a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, it was real. So I decided to send my cousin a message. It basically said, hi, 27 years ago I was conceived via using a donor, and this is the first time I've ever seen a match this close to me, who shared more DNA with me, or as much DNA with me as one of my siblings, essentially, because all my siblings are only half related to me. Never had a match with this much shared DNA. You have to be in direct line to my donor. And I prefaced, I was like, there's no need to respond, it's not necessary, I understand like the privacy component, I don't want to interfere anything. And I didn't hear back for a few days. Then I'll never forget this moment. We're sitting on the couch in my living room. I get another notification, and my cousin responds and says, yes, my dad's brother is your donor. Dumbfounded, right? I mean, tears, laughter, joy, every emotion you could possibly think of, I was feeling in that moment. It felt like I had just run a marathon and all of this adrenaline was seeping through me, and it was the most bizarre feeling, because I had just found what I had been looking 27 years for. So I continued in conversation with my cousin. We exchanged numbers. I got to know them a little bit more. I'm also not going to be sharing genders. I'm not going to be sharing names. I'm not going to be sharing any information at all in regards to who he is, where he is, anything like that. He is just a he, because his privacy is so important to me, and the relationship that I have built with him is so important to me. But sharing my story is also important. So, but there's a way to do that respectfully. We exchanged numbers, we shared photos with each other, we shared stories with each other, and then I asked my cousin, I said, look, I don't need a relationship with you. I don't need a relationship with him. All I ask for is one conversation. I just want to know my mental health history, any type of medical history. I mean, as you can see right here, that's all I received. Just the list of medical conditions not checked off. Well, that's what I asked for. I said, because if at the time I was wanting to have children, I needed to know. I needed to know if I was a carrier for something. The nurse in me, that really compelled me forward to pursuing this as well. Like why I was so active in the search was because I needed to know before I brought a child into this world. That was my own personal conscious decision. I had asked my cousin that. I said, That's all I want. I don't want money. That was a concern, obviously, because here I am coming out of nowhere. I didn't even know if he had told his family, if there were other kids out there from his donation. I didn't know. I had no idea. My cousin said that they would reiterate back and let me know. Months went by, and that feeling that I felt was like nothing I had ever experienced before. Utter, complete devastation. I prepared myself for it because I told myself, he doesn't owe you anything. He doesn't need to speak to you. You knew this. I went into this knowing the potential of you could come this far, this close, and he still has the autonomy and the audacity to say, I don't want anything to do with this. Well, it didn't happen. A few months went by and I received a text message, and it was from him. The text message was beautifully, eloquently worded. His language felt so similar to mine, and he wanted to meet up. He was gonna be in my hometown for work and asked if we could meet up for dinner, and I just about fell to my knees. And I had prefaced to him that I didn't even need that. I wanted the ball to be in his court, and he decided what to do with that ball. Like, figuratively speaking, I wanted him to make that decision. So for him to come to me, then to ask me to meet, and this of course is such a rare case because there are so many people out there who find their biological family members and they're either not alive, or they're ill, or they're in prison, or they want nothing to do with them. So as I sit here and I share my story with you all, I am aware of the privilege. I'm aware of the privilege that I have and I have had in terms of meeting him. I won't sit here and say that I deserved this, because I didn't. I worked for it. I pursued him, but he made the conscious decision of pursuing back, and that's not always the case. So I am aware. We had decided on a time to meet, and I was at the restaurant. Fast forward, I was at the restaurant. I was so anxious, panic attacks galore. Like, nothing could compare. No first day of school, first day of work, nothing. This level of anxiety was almost paralyzing. Like, I almost backed out a few times. I was like, I can't do this. But I did. And I remember I was like, how is he gonna know what I look like? How is he gonna know who I am? So I went to get my phone. I was like, oh my God, I'll let him know I'm in a white shirt and I have blonde hair, and because I was like, he's not gonna know what I look like. And all of a sudden, this gentleman appears at my table, and I look at him, he looks at me, and he goes, you look just like my daughter. I didn't even need to text him what I looked like, because the similarities were profound and very evident. We sat at that dinner table for almost 3.5 hours. We were one of the last people in that restaurant. That moment in my life will forever be engraved in my memory. There are moments that we experience as humans that we take with when we die, and that will be a moment on my deathbed that I will reflect back to with so much happiness. As we talked, it felt like I was looking at a mirror. All of the questions that I had answered right away, and there was no hesitation. I was so nervous that he wouldn't have interest or he wouldn't want to, but then I thought about myself, and if he was anything like me, then of course he would be interested back just as much, because I'm ridiculously inquisitive, and as is he. We sat there for hours. I asked all about his life. I asked about if he had children of his own, which he does. Told me all about his family life, what he liked to do. He's very political, very outspoken, just like me. It felt like all of the years of not knowing were worth it for this moment. And I would have waited another 27 years for this moment. I would have waited 30, 40 years to have this moment. I took a picture. It was just beautiful. And since then, we have continued to be in communication. We have met up for dinner again. I have a relationship with him. Never in a million years did I think I would ever say that. So again, I'm aware of my privilege, and I'm aware that this doesn't happen often. But there was a reason, right? I'm a firm believer in that. I have been able to fulfill every question that I have ever wondered. And to know that is a gift. Yeah, so that's the story. This is a vulnerable story, more difficult story to talk about and to share. Also, I do apologize if it's a bit sporadic in nature. This is the first time I've spoken about it on camera. So hopefully as I continue to talk about it, my vocabulary and sentence structure will be a little bit more cohesive. But it feels good. I feel very lucky. I feel very blessed to have him in my life and to have the relationship that I do. Of course, there's a level of envy and jealousy, because I think to myself, oh, well, what if he raised me? I wouldn't have had this life. You know, it's the back and forth. Not saying that I had a bad life. I didn't, not even nearly. But the comparison gets you. Comparison is the thief of all joy. And I have to sit with myself and remind myself that, because the joy that I do experience from this relationship is much more than the jealousy and the resentment that I have. I'm still working through all of these feelings, all of these emotions. It's been a beautiful experience, and you know, if I could sit here and say, well, what do I hope to come out of this relationship? What am I hoping for? And there's nothing. There's no expectations, because I never even thought I'd get him in this capacity. Again, all I wanted was a phone call or one conversation, and now I have a relationship. So that is my story, you guys. Very brief, because I could sit here for hours and talk to you about it and go into all the details. However, that's not for the internet. I'm more than happy to answer questions as long as they are not directly related to who he is and what he does. But if you want to know about how I felt during the process, or if you have any other questions about growing up, not knowing, please let me know and I will respond to those. But I just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch this. If you've gotten to the end, I really appreciate it. Well, thank you. Love you.